people that use banks have a bankers users association. Public transport users have an association. People with disabilities have some sort of lobby group. There was a huge gap when it came to homelessness, and it seemed that it indicated that there was a perception about homeless people and their inability to work together, or understand that they have been mistreated in some way. I thought it was a no-brainer in the sense that there was no one advocating on behalf of homeless people, where homeless people were themselves driving it. And to answer your question, how people how they received that idea, it was received exactly how the perception of homeless people is. People wanted. There was a lot of discussion about, should the union be just about housing? Whereas for people that have been homeless, we understand that the housing list, that the waiting list it's 7 years. In that time, what do? Do we become shut-ins? Do we sleep under a bridge and maintain our isolation? We still need to. The union was about building a community, basically, and I was driven by the desire to build a community that was, as others have said, that was welcoming, where people were being treated equally, that was listening to others, and that was going to act on their behalf. I think in the 9 or 10 months that the union's been in existence, I think it has done an incredible job, mainly because that the fact that people that are involved have had a lived experience, are currently homeless or have been homeless, and I think that empathy is really important, compassion is really important. I mean, if someone asks, so what have your achievements been? Just for us being able to go to 101 on Thursday was really powerful, because, people want to be heard. That's a basic, it's not in the United Nations Charter of Human Rights, but we're social beings, and to be ignored and to not be valued by your fellow human being can be quite, I'm sure it's devastating. I felt devastated when I was going through my situation alone, and that's why I self-medicated. So I can imagine that, I think it's really important that something like the Homeless Persons Union exists.
Since the sort of shift away from government having a hand in providing housing towards private operators stepping in and charities taking over, there's been a reduction in the way services have met people's needs. And an action I want you to sort of talk about now is the union's gone along and spoken to a service about calling a taxi instead of an ambulance for a person, which is a classic example of services saying, oh, well, they don't fear accountability. They don't care about the services they're providing, whether they're appropriate or not. Do you want to speak about that situation and how you think that fits in with the union's role?
Yeah. Look, one of the main roles of the union, I believe, and I think everyone can agree on this, was to provide a level of accountability. The individual that we spoke to was quite comfortable in telling us that he was happy to override someone with a background in medicine, because they had some other protocol in place. Now, if that individual had died on their property, that would not have been a good look. He was able to say, well, my employees are more important than this individual. And the fact that he had the gall and he was so confident in saying that, I suppose, for me, illustrates the problems that we face. Is that the services, for them it's a job. We don't get paid for what we do, and this isn't about blowing our own trumpets. It means we're involved in this because we know what it's like to be alone, frightened and confused. And when you're in that situation, there's nothing better than someone to come up to you and say, "How you going? How you feeling?" And services don't see it like that. As far as they're concerned, you're a number. The box is ticked, and when the Productivity Commission comes around and wants to find out whether they get their funding for the next year, they have a look at how many boxes are being ticked, and if a certain number of boxes are ticked, they get their funding. And they don't work together, they're siloed off. And I think this is, for me, and I know, and I'm probably going on a bit now, but I think that as members of the union, I think it's really important that there is some sort of voice that is going to say, no, you just can't treat people like that. It's just wrong.
Part of the feedback that the union receives is about concerns that these organisations and services are acting in ways that is considered predatory, and that there isn't any discernible exit point. So there's an entry point, you can get into these services, but the services aren't providing anything of a form of tangible assistance and support that sees people managing to go on with their lives and become independent and lead independent lives. And in some ways, when a service is charging a person 85% of their benefit for them to have a room at that boarding room or wherever it is, that financially cripples a person and limits their capacity to, an exit point where they are independent. What do you think the union's role is with this?
So there needs to be more time, energy, money being put in, not just to warehouse people, but to develop their capacity to look after themselves and to speak up for themselves. Because I think one of the roles of the union is to remind people that they have rights and they're entitled to social justice, and they are not refuse. They're not social refuse. They're actually valuable members of the community that have had some sort of difficulty, whether it be, a car accident, a breakup of a marriage, or, drug problem, whatever, that's led them to homelessness. So I think one of the important parts one of the important roles of the union is to educate the services and the community that, you can't just write people off.
One last question, and really quick, is the second-class citizen, first-class citizen, okay? So at the moment, predominantly people who are homeless are treated as second-class citizens, but that's what the union wants to see change, is everybody treated as first-class citizens. But you just speak about first-class and second-class.
I think, whether we call it first-class or second-class citizens, or the deserving and undeserving poor, I think it was illustrated in that story that was on the project, the young lady that was sleeping underneath the bridge. Now, I don't know her personally, but she was offered somewhere to live and an opportunity because she was attempting to study. Now, the problem, that's great for her, but the problem with that is that we're judging people on, it's a value judgment on what they're doing with their lives. Now, if they found her to be drinking underneath that bridge, would they have offered her a place to live? Probably not. And what we need, one of the challenges of the union is to remind government, services, whoever has the capacity and the resources to make a difference is to remind them that
we're all human.
We're all human beings, and I know that sounds like a cliche, but we all have inherent value. We all have ambitions. We all have hopes. We all have dreams at some stage, until they were probably beaten out of us by, the daily grind. We had loves, desires, all these things that for some reason services have forgotten, that when they talk to someone over that counter, they think that that person doesn't have those things, but they do. And I think that's an important role of the union. And, whether we're successful in building another block of flats or not, isn't as important as changing the attitude of people so that homeless people are able to regain their humanity.
Well done, brother.